The taser is a brand name of a particular conducted energy device or weapon, and it's been in use in Canada since about 1999-2000 by various police forces. It's basically a weapon that it fires two darts. They're connected by wires to the gun itself, and once those two darts strike a body, the officer can then discharge the weapon, fire the weapon, and that puts 50,000 volts into the person's body.
And it creates, essentially it creates muscular tetany between the contact points on the body. So the muscles contract uncontrollably as a result of the electronic stimulation from the weapon system. In other words, it's not dependent on a person's pain threshold or on their mental state. It actually physically incapacitates a person regardless of where their mind's at and what level of pain they can withstand.
But the problem is they are a weapon, and when they're used indiscriminately or in a way that's inappropriate, then there's no question they can do bodily harm and they can result in death.
The first test of a taser in Canada was in 1999 by the Victoria Police Department. And within 2 or 3 years, many other police departments and other corrections facilities and so on across Canada had purchased initially just a few, but now, of course, most police departments have many of them now.
The weapon was introduced to police in Canada without any public consultation at all. There was no opportunity for the public, for the taxpayers to decide whether or not this new high-tech weapon should be introduced to the police here. One of the biggest difficulties is that much of the available research and many of these studies have in fact been sponsored by Taser International, the manufacturer of the weapon. Others have been sponsored and paid for by law enforcement officials. And my view is that in these cases where the study has been funded and sponsored by either law enforcement or the manufacturer of the weapon, they're not sufficiently independent to be reliable. The fact that police in practice are not using the taser as an alternative to lethal force, but they're using it as a compliance tool. And that's very concerning because this weapon causes excruciating pain, and it can, if someone's improperly motivated, be an instrument of torture.
We're not opposed to the use of force, but we are opposed to the misuse of force, and I think that's an important distinction here.
I think police officers, like people in any other occupation, step outside of the lines from time to time, and I've certainly seen videotape that has appalled me. But that doesn't come down to the weapon system being bad. That comes down to the issue of leadership, training, discipline, and supervision. And when people do step outside the lines, they need to be brought into line with policy, and they need to be disciplined where appropriate.
Yeah, the factors we see in terms of death following use of the taser, it's usually a combination of things. So the tasering on top of someone who's high on drugs, particularly cocaine or those kinds of things. Someone who has a pre-existing poor health condition, a heart condition, those kinds of things. The other area that concerns us is when it's used in connection with different kinds of restraint, when a person's inability to breathe is compromised, if they're sat on or stepped on, if they're held down in a difficult position, we often see that seems to be a contributing factor in the death following use of a taser.
How is he still fighting them off?
My own opinion on the Robert Jacansky case is that the 4 uniformed armed police officers who confronted Mr. Jacansky on the night in question did not act appropriately, that they did not give Mr. Jacansky any real opportunity to comply with their demands. They did not take any steps to defuse the situation. And my own opinion is that they reacted using excessive force.
If that's the way they're trained in the RCMP to deal with one man who's causing a disturbance in a public place, that they should immediately, without any plan in mind, rush onto the scene and then within 30 seconds have him dead on the ground, tasered 5 times. That's absolutely unacceptable police work. And in the aftermath, when he was injured and lying there, they had an absolute duty to try to revive him. And they didn't. And they didn't allow others to deal with him. It took on almost a surreal quality when you look at that and think about it.